This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The most profitable wager to the sportsbook is a parlay, and you're discouraging users from making them on your platform? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only podcast purifying the sports betting industry. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials at InPlay Live. You want to see what InPlay Live is all about? Come join me, come join Pace. You can do that with a promo code that is Behind the Lines, all caps, and you can see what it's all about on the inside. All right. I'm your host, Shane Mercer. That guy over there, Andrew Pace, the founder of InPlay Live. And we are back at it again here for another week. Pace, how was your weekend, your week? How's everything been going for you since we last chatted?
Really good. Yeah, I had a great week. Keeping things simple. I think, Shane, the audience is more interested in your story now because we're getting a Sunday by Sunday rundown of being disappointed with $500, being down $1,000. How are things going for you?
Things have significantly turned around. I'm very, very happy. I had a great weekend. Since we last chatted, that account that was looking very unhealthy after that losing stretch has returned to full health.
Return to glory.
Return to glory. Got that $1,000 back. Got a lot more than that back in that account, which is fantastic. And just crushing it on college basketball. Doing really well there. One of my favorite things to bet on, and one of my favorite strats. And for anybody out there who's listening, you can go back and listen to our college basketball show from a few weeks ago, and we talked a lot about that. But I personally absolutely love dialing into college basketball. But on top of that, too, we had a great NFL weekend as well. We did really well with NFL. I was really happy with that. So, I did about 3K over the weekend, which is kind of what I'd like to do going forward on a more regular basis, especially when I'm locking in for a whole day like I did on Sunday. And that's kind of, where I want to make those sort of my average days going forward, or at least for the rest of this kind of season, which sort of takes us all the way till about the end of March or so. This is, a Pace, you do those primers. So for everybody out there who's not a part of InPlay Live, and if you are a part of InPlay Live and you're not watching the Monday primer, I encourage you to go watch the Monday primer. It's like 10-15 minutes. You don't even have to watch it. You can just listen to it. But Pace, I think in the primer, you sort of said this is the time of year where you really like to lock in and dial it in. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Well, I'm trying to really lock in, dial it in from now until about the end of March. And just really kind of, have really strong days, strong weeks, strong months from now till then. And then, maybe then I'll unplug a little bit and kind of take a bit of a break. But no, it's been fantastic. It was nice to kind of vent a little bit here on the show about it and kind of get that stuff out there. But I'm really happy with this past weekend and how things went for me. So really happy about that. But of course, this show isn't about me necessarily and my runs or your runs or anything. We're here to talk about the books and what they've been doing. And there's been a lot of funny things going on, shall we say. So we've got a few different topics to get into in the sports betting world. But first, Pace, you've got some stuff that you wanted to share when it comes to getting limited and maybe some books doing some other shady things.
I mean, obviously we did our episode on being limited. I've just went through back-to-back books on the same day, different sports books, one being very well-known regulated book in Canada, that's partners and brothers or sisters, shall we say, with a very well-regulated book in the United States, limiting an account down $5,000, which I wouldn't say is uncommon, but it just sucks when this quote unquote business decision has been made by a sports book where you have sufficiently shown them that you're not just a good customer being down $5,000, but an excellent, exceptional customer. So you're punished for a large wager, even though it lost. You're punished for potentially betting on something that they didn't like, whether it won or lost was irrelevant. So I had that happen on a major regulated sports book. And then interestingly enough, I had the exact same situation happen on an offshore crypto sports book that I found that uses some lines that I was interested in. And basically what happened with this sports book is I deposited $4,000 into the sports book, had a really, really good opportunity and clicked that old fancy BetMax button. And the BetMax was, I think, 3,500. I had $500 left in the account, and the bet lost. I had $500 left in the account, and put the 500 on the next wager. And by the way, if you're new to this, guys, I'm not betting that percentage. That isn't the percentage of my bankroll that I bet. I didn't bet, 80% of my bankroll on one wager. I my unit size can afford to make that $3,500 bet. So bet the $500, won, bet the $1,000, which it was more like 900 because it was like a normal juice, kind of like a 1.9, 1.8 line, won. So won those two bets and got my balance back to $1,600 and woke up limited in that sports book. So lost a couple $1,000, and they said it was, the classic line that they give you a business decision not to work with you anymore. So I don't really know what the point of what I'm saying is, just because I know that so many of our listeners have had this happen to them. But if you haven't had it happen to you, I know the first time it happens, it feels strange because it's one of these things in life where I don't know if it's Superman syndrome or what it is, but people oftentimes think that bad things don't happen to them or won't happen to them. And then the first time you get limited, you feel a little stunned and shocked that it actually did happen to you. I just think that the industry as a whole just needs so much work. And it's kind of why this podcast exists. It's why In Play Live exists. It's really hard to comprehend walking into a store, buying something off the shelf of that store, and then being told that you're not welcome back. When you win your bets, it feels so wrong to be limited, where you're like, gosh, like I'm just a customer playing by your rules, preaching the things that you guys preach in the media. All these commercials of us winning money and just living this great life through you. I'm actually living to an extent, and not without its struggle and challenge, and being told, hey, you're done. Sure. But as a losing customer that on paper supported, the growth of your sports book. And I think in the case of this crypto book that I used, they hadn't had someone click that BetMax button. So when they saw that had happened, they're that small. They're like, oh, we don't like what he bet on.
Right.
This guy knows what he's doing. And also too, it's an odds provider that I had seen before. So, the trading team can go, who is this guy? Let's get him verified. So what they did is they said, yeah, we're happy to, look at your limits, but we need you to verify. And this one was wild. I had to do, so this is like a crash course on a few of our different episodes, but I had to do, all your documents. And it's funny because some people are like, they asked for my documents. That's so shady. But I had to do all my documents as you do need to. But every document I sent, I needed to send a screenshot with. So I had to actually print stuff. Like typically you wouldn't print out your proof of address. So I did screenshots with it. And then they came back and said, can you please video yourself on your account page? So a selfie of you where in the same shot of the video is your account details page. So I'm like, all right, this is cool. They're just making sure that it's me, and I'm never really opposed to that kind of stuff. It can be like, oh my God, you want this now, or this isn't approved for this reason or whatever. That's just ridiculous. All right, they want their stuff. I'll just give it to them. That was kind of my mentality. And then sure enough, everything's been approved and you've been verified, but your limits are the way they are. So that can be the trading team looking up your past performance with a different sports book that gets you limited. But yeah, the whole landscape is in a challenging spot with respect to all of those things covered. And the good news is there's a lot of positives, books that aren't limiting you, and new sports books trying new things and new markets, ESPN Bet and that kind of thing that we've talked about a little bit, where there are these new opportunities that really gets you excited. But yeah, it sucks to see that happening. And my biggest advice to everyone listening is don't let it become the norm. Don't sit there and go, oh, I'm toast, on to the next. Stand up for yourself each and every time. That means contacting the support of that sports book, asking for a reason. They'll never give you one. asking for a complaint number so that you can go to that sportsbook's regulator. Whether the regulator does something or not isn't the point. It's about voicing the issue or the concern, and go to the media. So if that means their social media page saying, hey, these are, and give them the data, right? Like, give them the hard facts. Signed up for the sports book today, made 3 bets. They limited me and asked for all these documents, still haven't paid me the remaining balance that's in my account. Go right onto their Twitter, go right onto their Instagram, comment underneath, go to your local media if you need to. Like, don't let them get away with catering to problematic losing players. That is not a level playing field. So each and every time it happens to you, recognize that this is not, the way the industry is. This is war, and we have to stand up and rise together, because one person doing it will do nothing. We all have to do it.
Yeah, I love that you said there, go to the media. A lot of people think like, oh, what, I've got to contact the local news and talk to them. And, no, right? We live in a day and age now where the media is at your fingertips. You control your own media, right? You control your Facebook account, your Twitter account, your Instagram account, your TikTok, your LinkedIn, whatever it might be, right? There's so many options for you. And all you got to do is go on there and tag them and make a post and say, hey, you did this to me. Why'd you do this? Right? What's the purpose of this? And that kind of thing. And you can hit them right up just like that. And it's as quick and easy as going on your phone and scrolling, like most people are often doing, and wasting time doing that. Instead, hey, go make a post and tag that sports book. Now let's talk about that. Then you brought up ESPN Bet. We've been talking about them a lot lately on the show, and here they are making another appearance on Behind the Lines for something that they did that is kind of shady, and they actually got tagged by a guy on Twitter. So this was Calculator Grant, at Calculator Grant, posting his parlay, and I don't know how many legs he had, maybe 6-7 legs on this parlay. I think it was mostly NFL bets, and one outcome on that parlay pushed. Now, most sports books would say, okay, you pushed that leg of the bet, we're going to pay out your winnings at reduced odds. And I think his odds on this were something like 23-1, something like that. So, he had a pretty significant parlay here, that was going to pay out 23-1. He pushed one leg. So maybe, with the push that should have paid out maybe somewhere in like the area of 15-1, something like that, 16-1, depending on what the juice was on it and all that. But the point is that ESPN Bet didn't pay him out. Instead, they voided the entire parlay. So instead of paying him out, at reduced odds, they said, no, you pushed one leg of your bet, so we're gonna scrap the whole wager. Here's your bet back. The bet's voided. He posted this on Twitter. He did get a response from ESPN Bet, and the response was, oh, hey, reach out to us, contact us, let's talk about this. And then it turns out, the conversation was, well, here's our byline, or our bylaws, our little fine print bylaws. We love to talk about the fine print here. Here's our little fine print bylaws, and in it clearly says that if one leg of your parlay is pushed, the whole thing is voided. So they've actually got it written into their policy that this is something that they're going to do, which is very different than the rest of the sports books. All the major sports books would typically pay that out. So, good on this guy for going online and posting about it and making everybody aware about it. But Pace, do you think this is something that ESPN Bet might look to change if they take enough heat on it?
This is like watching the end of a college football game, where a coach makes a decision that makes you want to blow your brains out. It doesn't make any sense. But my brain immediately jumps to the benefit to the player by a losing parlay. You lose all your legs and one leg pushes. Well, give me my bet back.
Yeah. You think they're doing that? I don't think so.
It's written in the fine print. So if anyone's watching this that's used ESPN, go back through all your parlays right now, and if any of your lines have pushed, they should refund that based on that guideline. I haven't read it myself, so I'm sure the requirement for the push isn't losing legs, probably ruin it regardless. But that would be my stance on it. I'm shocked that they stuck to their guns on this, on a wager. Like, this is so stupid. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The most profitable wager to the sports book is a parlay and you're discouraging users from making them on your platform? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It really doesn't make a lot of sense from the sportsbooks side of things, right? If anything, you'd want to maybe pay that parlay out, go post it on your social media and advertise it like, hey, check out this guy. Oh, he pushed one leg, but he still won all this money off of his parlay, right?
And
That would
think
be the
about the
play.
think about the advertising.
Yeah.
When you could even have a line that's even a little bit worse somewhere. Like let's say everywhere had -6.5 for the everywhere has -6.5 for the Jaguars tonight, but they have -7. How many ESPN users are going to recognize that are making parlays? Probably not a lot.
Yeah.
So let's say it lands on 7 and everywhere covered. ESPN could literally say, you pushed. We don't care. We're giving you the win still. Like have a policy like that because people would share that and say if
Yeah.
your parlays push, they still pay you there. And that could be an incentive to make parlays at ESPN Bet. Instead, they're discouraging the best customers they could possibly capture to make the most profitable bets to the house at their sportsbook. Well, ESPN Bet, I wonder if you're going to come up again on this show.
I have a feeling that they probably will. In this case too, I'm sure their customer service team is, contacting the trading team to talk about how we can avoid this from happening again in the future, and maybe reviewing those bylaws that they have written into their policy. You would think that they would that they would do something about it. But I also want to bring this up because I think, Pace, we're in that time of year now where we're getting towards Christmas, right? And people are out there looking for some extra cash. And I watch a lot of football. I watch a lot of NBA basketball. I watch a lot of hockey. I watch, and I know the sport and I know it. And I just know that this team and this team and this team are gonna have this outcome and that outcome. And I'm gonna put together this parlay and I'm gonna hit it for a whole bunch of cash. And I'm gonna be able to buy all my Christmas gifts with it. Right? I know that people think this way, right? And they go through these sort of feelings and thoughts, and they think that this is something that is a way, for them to actually make money. And there's even people within our group, Pace. I don't want to call anybody out. I'm not going to say any names, but you see people posting parlays, even within In Play Live, where we actively preach against parlaying, right? Unless it's for something that is very, very recreational and a way to convince the books you're a bad better. But I saw one parlay get posted, and I think the member missed it by one, but in the corner of the screen, you could see his balance. His balance was $0 in the account. And I'm thinking, dude, is this really something you should be doing? Or, is this really recreational? Is this really just for butter? I don't know. I don't know. I think a lot of people out there have some bad habits when it comes to parlaying, and especially these big parlays. And it's something that I would suggest people move away from. But it's also not easy to break betting habits, right? And I think parlaying is one of the big betting habits that is probably really difficult to break because it is that kind of a lotto ticket in a lot of ways, right? And we're right in that season where, geez, a couple extra $1,000 could go a long way, right?
Totally. Well, don't make them at ESPN Bet. If you're going for your lottery ticket, make sure you place it at a good book. But in all seriousness, like Bet365 had some really good parlay boosts back in the day, and I know that there's a prominent member in our group that was betting on tennis, and tennis favorites tend to come through in majors, the big ones early on, and you're getting these parlay boosts on 10, 12 pick parlays, and people were hitting these massive boosts on 365, so much so that they actually took the promotion down completely. And I know that the whole design of that is kind of what we just touched on. Encourage your players to make parlays and reward them for doing it at your sportsbook. But it's funny how as soon as you cross the line over into a category where there's some edge, the action that you attract and how detrimental that can be to your sportsbook, especially in the parlay category. And the reason for that is because, like you just said, you can get these quick hits for big money. So if you are offering an edge now in that space, that quick hit is coming, and it is coming with some really good sports bettors that know what they're doing in those categories. And yeah, it can hit you hard, and it can hit you hard and fast. So yeah, it's actually interesting because the likelihood or the probability of hitting a wager obviously decreases by the outcome becoming less and less statistically attainable. But when there is an edge on those outcomes, or when the correlation between them creates an edge. So an example of a correlated created edge would be if you offered the same odds on a parlay for independent picks of Joe Burrow's passing yards with Jamar Chase's receiving yards. I know Joe Burrow's hurt right now when I make this, but that is a very correlated bet. If Joe Burrow throws for 400 passing yards, Jamar Chase is probably going to go over his pregame receiving yard total, right? So this is where parlays become effective. This is where, if the sports book isn't recognizing these correlations, that you can gain significant edges in certain spots, and then combine that with potential promotions and different things that sports books do to encourage you to do that on those sports books, and bang, you can make some money in that spot. So obviously, these be all end all statements like don't make parlays, there are exceptions to them in a whole different series. And Shane, you just touched on one. One of the biggest reasons to make a parlay is to present yourself to that sports book as someone that they want as a customer. Now, unfortunately, you can't control, who's going to come and go in any given sports betting community. I think as a general statement, the industry is just plagued with tons of filth, locks, whale plays, parlays, whatever the case may be. Outcome oriented thinking where, you claim to know the outcome before it happened, or you justify what happened based on the outcome, basically saying, this was the right decision because it won. We've had parlay ads where we speak out against parlays. We've got Raj being Raj, the co-founder of In Play Live,
The brains
which
behind In Play Live.
we should get him on here, right, at some point to chat about something maybe not as behind the lines, but we got him looking like a dummy making a stupid parla, recreational parla, right? And then the ad goes out with him in it, and then we speak out against parlays in the ad that you shouldn't do them, and then below the ad a whole bunch of comments of people proving that I'm wrong because they're sending in a winning parlay saying that because it won, I'm wrong, and they have no tracking and no information about the net loss that they've had over time. But the reality is simple. If you have $10 today to bet on something and you can't make rent, or you can't do this or that, it's a quick and easy way to see a potential added zero in your bank account, like 10 to 500, 10 to 1,000, whatever it is. And you piece it all together and you enjoy the game and watch the game cheering for it. So yeah, I mean, it is something that people look as this get rich quick sort of thing. And you say it is a hard pattern to drop. Yeah, I have a real hard time agreeing with that, or actually even sympathizing with it. I really do. I think it's stupid. I think that if you have data and information about your betting history and about your long-term success, there's nothing that's going to point to this sort of recreational parla being something that you should continue to do beyond entertainment of money that you can afford to lose. If that's all it is, that's fine. But yeah, I think it's stupid, and I think it's easy to get away from. Track your bets, recognize the patterns, and stop doing the things that are causing you to lose money over time. It's not nicotine. Nicotine is one of the most addictive substances in the world. I don't have a personal relationship with nicotine at all. But I know that if you try to stop, your body tells you with every fiber and power of being that it's required for you to take your next breath. If that's how you feel about a parlay, like something's wrong. So I say simply stop.
It's not nicotine, but it is dopamine, right? And
There you go.
you get that hit, you get that rush when making it. And we've got another story here I want to bring up, and this is out of the Guardian. So this is the British news publication, very highly respected publication, very reputable. And this is fresh out this week from the Guardian, looking at addiction in the United States, specifically when it comes to sports betting. And clearly, people are getting that dopamine fix, and perhaps they're getting too much of it, because what it's found is that some of the stats that it looked at is that addiction among kids in the US, so under legal betting age, saying the country is heading towards a quagmire, if not a crisis. So using some of that good British language there, quagmire, or at least that's what one expert thinks. They looked at the New Jersey Gambling Helpline, saying in 2018 it had about 1,000 calls per year, and it's now getting 2,500 calls per year, so more than double what it used to. Another expert saying it's killing the youth because it's mostly young men. Again, much of the research showing underage. And meanwhile, revenues are spiking for these sports books. FanDuel in the 2022-2023 fiscal year, $2 billion in revenue. DraftKings, $1.5 billion. MGM, close to $1 billion. So, clearly there's a lot of young people out there feeling like, hey, sports betting is something all my friends are doing. I'm going to do it too. All my friends are making big parlays. Johnny hit one for, $5,000. And man, when you're 17 years old, $5,000 is a game changer, right? So I think, that there is a lot of this going on out there, and people perhaps aren't creating healthy relationships with their sports books, and perhaps it's getting unhealthy. But Pace, I think you and I can probably both attest or have some lived life experience of betting on sports underage. I know I started really early, but I don't think it was ever a major problem for me, or to the point where I felt I would have to call a helpline. Uh, but clearly, it's an issue out there. And perhaps parlays are a big part of what's driving that addiction. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think the dopamine statement is true. Obviously, it's like a scientific fact, but you don't need to get it from a parlay. You can get it from a positive EV value wager. Like there's other ways to get it, right? You can go to the gym. You can jump in a cold plunge. Like there's different ways to get dopamine hits. Like so I get it. People want quick, fast money. As far as like all of that happening goes, I think there's a place for it in the industry. It is fun. It is exciting. I think from an entertainment standpoint, it's unparalleled. I think it's amazing. I love sports betting. Even the gambling side of it, it is fun. It's exciting. It's electric. It's energetic. I see some of my buddies that fully know what I do for a living, fully could grasp it. No problem. No problem. Some of the smartest guys I know. Successful guys, very successful. They'll come over here, they throw together that parlay, and they just have a blast. And they hoot and howl at us winning money. They think it's hilarious in a great way. Like, but they're sitting there, rooting in their parlay, and they could just be taking the bets that are being called. No, they're unplugging.
Yeah,
they're working all day, families, whatever the case may be. Give me that parlay, give me that teaser. Let's have some fun. Let's ride. And I think that there is so much about that that's just fun, positive, exciting. I'm talking about people that are betting money that is so insignificant to their success. If the parlay hit, they would have made more per hour at their jobs than if the parlay won. And they cheer for that parlay and hold on to that phone or bet slip or whatever it may be, like dear life throughout the day, maybe a beer in the other hand. And man, like when you look at it from that side and you take out this gambling hotline and all that, that's just epic. It's just good fun. It's fucking good entertainment and good fun. So, there's a place for all this in the industry. And I think where the line gets crossed is, like you said, people relying on the money, people using money that they can't afford, people thinking that it's their way out of some other life. The list goes on and on and on. And that's where, you brought up a little while ago, the group, like a parlay in the group. So if you're in our group right now and you're listening to this, and maybe you're newer to the group as well, simply stop it. Like, just cut it out. Get your shit together, focus in, and make some goddamn money. Shane started this thing out saying he made $3,000 over this weekend and wants to make that, kind of a consistent norm. $3,000 in a weekend is more than most people get paid in 2 weeks across North America. So $3,000 paychecks, not factoring in taxes, like, I don't know, something like $80,000 a year. If you can pull that out in a couple days or a day, like, gosh, and keep it coming in, and because you're not making parlays, because you're making consistent, disciplined decisions, that's what it's all about. And you know what, Shane? When I hear a lot of the stuff that you just said, it's sad, it's dark, it's the bad sides of the industry. But at the same time, I'm like, well, geez, there's a better way to do this. Like, you can make money consistently by following the right people in this industry. And I'm not necessarily saying in play live. There's other forms of successful betting beyond ours, but certainly we are one of them. So yeah, just stop, get your shit together, and recognize that in some circumstances, obviously a lot of paid scammers and bullshit out there, but in a lot of circumstances, the amount that you're losing far succeeds the cost of the information and knowledge associated with someone else's service or subscription or course or whatever it is that's out there that can turn things around for you for the better.
Yeah, and we've had some of those people on the show, and we look to have more on the show in the future and bring you some of those people too, because we want to hear different perspectives and talk to other people who are doing well in the industry and approaching it in a way that that is a little bit more than recreational or just for fun. Not like those guys, not like your friends coming over and making their parlays and rooting them in. Meanwhile, like that is for fun, right? And I think you nailed it there. They're trying to unplug, right? But Pace, I think when we're doing this kind of thing, we are trying to lock in. We aren't trying to unplug. We are trying to dial it in and really focus and approach it in a way that is work, a labor of love, though, of course, because we enjoy it and we have fun doing it. But it's absolutely not an opportunity to unplug, I guess, right? It really is. It really is work, and that's a big way that I approach it, and that's the way I talk to my family about it. That hey, I'm working right now. I'm busy, generating revenues here, and that's the approach. But I think a lot of average recreational bettors certainly don't take that approach, and that's a mindset shift. If you want to make money in this business, it's not something that happens fast, and it's not something that happens easy. And you might hit one parlay that brings in some extra cash, but that cash will disappear pretty quick, especially if you're making parlays on the regular, which you will probably do after you hit one. You'll keep thinking, oh, I'll just make another one and another one and another one. But if you take an approach that, hey, this is it takes hard work and it takes a lot of learning, and it takes effort and time. Man, you can really reap rewards over time. Now, I want to get to one other story here that I think is like it's such a great read, so I want to bring it up, and then I'm just going to throw a couple questions at you about it. So here's the background. This is in the Washington Post, a publication, that is again highly reputable, but they've also done a lot of investigative pieces on the sports betting world, on the gambling industry. And Pace, I think you've even spoken to some of their journalists in the past, and you've been quoted in the Washington Post, right?
A few times,
A few
yes.
times, yeah. So this is one of the most reputable journalistic publications in North America, and they've got a great article out there. And I encourage people who are listening, if you have some time, go and read this. It's a bit of a long read. It's not a quick read. It's a good 20 minutes, kind of read, but it was fantastic. And so this in-depth investigative piece about Wayne Nix, a former minor league baseball player. He managed to form relationships with some of the biggest sports stars in the world and celebrities. And essentially, what he ended up doing was creating a network of bookies. And so some of the people he was connected with, Scottie Pippen, Maverick Carter, who is LeBron James's agent and business partner, Yasiel Puig, baseball player, who any MLB fans will know the name. Those are some of the notable names, and they ended up essentially betting with this guy Wayne Nix, and then he had a whole bunch of other people sort of part of this network of sports bookies, and he created an offshore sports book to kind of help move that money around. Um, and he had more than 1,000 clients, and we were talking about other big name celebrities and sports stars, and they were moving around quite a lot of money. Long story short, this guy ended up being found guilty of operating an illegal gambling business and filing a false tax return. But it got me thinking of the whole idea: does anyone place bets with bookies anymore? We mentioned, FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, those massive revenues that they're generating, and it's all legal to be able to go and bet with these sports books. Why still go underground? Is there a place for bookies out there?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've touched on like how books like ESPN Bet, um, with a really bad interface, how they survive, and that a lot of sharp players wind up betting there instead of the recreational players that they look for, because they'll just stick with their FanDuels and their DraftKings and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's a whole world out there that exists for the bookie environment. There's a whole series of reasons as to why someone would use a bookie. The first reason is keeping the money that you're betting secret. So you just listed off a number of people that if they had DraftKings or MGM, they might actually be voiding their professional contracts. So if they wanted to place bets through someone, it needs to be done in this fashion, so that there's no trace of that person's account, or the wager that was made, or whatever the case may be. But the more common example of a person using a bookie is to hide the finances relating to the gambling being done from their spouse. So if you pull out cash, or if you have a certain amount of cash, you're operating with that money through your bookie, as opposed to seeing transactions on your bank statement or your credit card or wherever it may be. So the anonymous factor of it is massive. That would be the first. The second one is cash. So we talked about the anonymous side of it, but the cash aspect of a lot of people that are involved in illegal activity. So again, now we have these crypto books and things like that, but especially if you rewind the tape before the crypto books, you're going to have a lot of, maybe drug dealers or whatever the case may be, that are being paid in cash and they have their money there. So they'll use a bookie because that's an easy transaction where the money didn't actually need to go into any bank accounts. They actually don't want to have to go deposit into a bank account. So the cash aspect of it is huge. There's more reasons than that, but the anonymous and the cash are massive. The next is when you get into sharp players that are limited at their sports books, and this is where regulators just have to do a better job. They're like, oh, it's safe to play at these books, and we want you to come over here, and we take the risk out of it, and you're the ones that if you lose, and when you play through us, you're supporting the blah, 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 blah government and this community, trying to make it seem noble for using them. But what if they limit you and they don't let you keep playing? Well, people look, especially people that have made money, they look for new sources of where they can wager funds. And that's where offshore sports books come in, and that's where potentially cash bookies come in, and people use them. Is it safe, and does it go against a lot of the things that the regulated books preach? Sure. I mean, there's probably people that have died relating to this stuff. I'd imagine with certainty there have been, but
Well,
that doesn't mean that they're not going to.
in this article, yeah, they bring up some instances of physical intimidation that took place, and debt collecting and the kind of stuff that you see in the movies, right? I'm gonna break your thumbs type shit, right? So
Oh, totally.
yeah, it's crazy to think that would still be happening though in jurisdictions now where it is fully legalized
Yeah.
and
So,
regulated.
and that brings me to the last reason, and that's limits. So depending on who you're working with, this guy in this article being obviously a really prominent example, um, you can't place wagers the size of wagers that you want to in a lot of cases for some people. So they have to do it through a bookie. So a lot of the top, like underground bookies that will exist in certain cities, they'll take 7-figure wagers. Whereas, maybe your DraftKings and your FanDuels and your MGMs might not even take a 5-figure wager. So, limits would be the next and final reason that I would list. I'm sure I'm missing some points, but those would be the top ones that I would say. As to, I wouldn't even say like, do those still exist? It's like they exist in droves, in massive levels, and they've become more competitive because they want customers still, and in order to become more competitive, they have to give you a reason to play with them, um, when they're competing against a DraftKings or a FanDuel for a lot of different people. Then of course, the last thing we didn't touch on is just the states that aren't regulated yet. So if you don't have regulated sports betting, of course, there's going to be bookies around. Like there's a kind of a running joke that in California, you're going to get a bookie like greeting you at the corner of Rodeo Drive, like because of the fact that the sports betting there just hasn't been legalized. And a lot of these cash bookies, like the way it used to work, obviously, was, they'd tell you what the line was. You'd call it in, you phone, they place the bet on a piece of paper or whatever the case they have to, and they bookkeep it. And then that's how they'd manage it. But all these bookies are now using websites. So you sign up for a website on their platform, and you can't go in. Well, in some cases you can, but you can't go in and necessarily log in and create an account. You have to know the person, have a relationship with them in some capacity, and then they will make you a login and send it to you to make sure that they have more or less verified who you are as a person, and that you're not someone that they don't necessarily want to be working with.
Wow, it's just crazy to think. But yeah, you mentioned California, and I'm thinking about this guy who was living and residing in California as well, and working with like I said, LeBron James's agent and other high profile celebrities. I mean, it's sort of a bastion of celebrity and money, and meanwhile, it's not a regulated market. So yeah, you're going to get a whole lot of money flowing into this sort of black market or gray market or however the hell you want to describe it, but. Just unbelievable to think that it's that it is still happening, and happening even more perhaps than it was happening in the past, because now sports betting is so mainstream, right? And if you're in an unregulated area, but you're still seeing and feeling all the pressures of the advertisements, the stuff that's happening in the advertisements. I'm thinking in the arena in a regulated market, like you're watching games there or something, you're still seeing it. It's still all around you, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. So you may be pressured to go down that way, and that is the real dark side of this industry, right? Yeah, wild.
There's one reason I didn't state that I think is really important, and it's actually a really obvious one, but credit.
Right.
So a lot of bookies operate on credit, and people with gambling problems will go find bookies. And the reason is because they have no money. They can't get their bets in. Their credit cards are maxed out, and they get a line of credit with a bookie where maybe it's just $1,000 to start, but they've got some money that they can play with. And that's where you get into, the potentially I'm going to come break your kneecaps type scenarios where these guys can't pay and they have to run and flee from these bookies. But that's also a big reason why people use them. So if you are addicted to gambling and you want to go place your parlay this weekend on DraftKings, but you don't have a single method of deposit, you might be able to find a bookie that'll give you a bit of a credit to get started with, to go play. So yeah, that's a big reason to use them as well. And Molly's Game, if you guys have seen Molly's Game, it's an amazing book and just an incredible film. And that's an underground poker game. And you would go, well, why wouldn't these guys just go play at, Bobby's Room in the Bellagio, or go play at the Venetian in Vegas, or whatever the case may be? Again, it's anonymous, underground, it's a high profile list of people. And, I think Toby Maguire was one of the big names that was associated with Molly's Game. And yeah, I mean, you're playing poker in a high limit, high stakes room where you get served whatever you want beyond food and drinks. And, it's all kept off the books, right?
Yeah. Great film, right? Fantastic movie. And yeah, hey, who doesn't want to play a little poker with Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, Pace, we've covered a lot of ground on today's show. So I think it's probably time to wrap it up. Thanks for joining me as always, and we'll continue to keep bringing you stories from the sports betting world. And if you've got a story you want to share with us, you can comment below. We'll be happy to share it on the show. If a book has done you wrong, we'd love to hear about it. So please give us those comments, and maybe we'd even bring you here on the show and do an interview with you. But yeah, all right, buddy. Well, till next week, keep eating those books, but maybe not those bookies. Take it easy, buddy.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join in Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.